Welcome to another OCP Solution Provider Spotlight. The SP Spotlight are conversations with our certified OCP solution providers who manufacture, integrate, and resell OCP solutions. This week, I have the opportunity to speak with Barry McGinley, a technical sales engineer with EPS Global. EPS Global is a worldwide IT services and distribution company based in Ireland and with worldwide locations, focused a lot on open networking. And Barry has a lot of knowledge, both on the history of open networking and where the industry is headed. Had a great time speaking with Barry, and we talk about everything from Pearl Jam all the way through the mergers and acquisitions within the industry in the last 12 to 18 months. So enjoy this week's episode of the SP Spotlight. Thanks for joining me today, Barry.
Cheers, Steve.
Great. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in the IT industry, and a little bit about EPS as well.
Yeah, no problem. So I actually got into the IT industry quite late. I did what all Irish people generally do and went traveling. So I think I went to the US to become a golfer when I was about 20. I went over to the Hamptons and worked as a caddy and taught junior golf, and then I did 4 years of that, came back, and then still wasn't ready to settle down. I went to Glasgow for a couple of years to follow the football team Celtic. I support a family over there as well. And then when I came home, met a nice girl and started to put the head down. Now, I was always into technology. Like when I was about 40, when I was about 13, 14, one of my friends had a 386 and we were on the Pearl Jam chat room, and I just couldn't believe it. I was chatting to guys in America. I just couldn't believe how it worked. And then I was told it worked over the phone line. So I was always into it. But then I came back and actually looked at it kind of logically, and I looked at what industries were going to expand. I was looking at what automation wouldn't take over and looked at networks. So did a degree in DIT, which is Dublin Institute of Technology. It's a university now. It's Technical University of Dublin. I just loved CLI stuff. Loved being behind a computer. Then I suppose my job with EPS would be a lot different to that, which I actually love. So EPS are 21 years old this year, based out of Dublin. We're a distributor mainly, so a value-added distributor. We've 3 distribution hubs globally. So we've one in Shenzhen in China, one in Dublin for EMEA, and one in Indianapolis for the Americas. And I suppose we started off as just a distributor selling transceivers. Actually, there's a funny story to that as well. The sales director for the Americas was sitting in a room at one of these conferences that people usually sit at, and he heard a guy beside him giving out about his distributor. He ended up talking to him, and it ended up being Finisar, who are 2.6 now, and that's how we ended up becoming the global distributors for Finisar. But that was maybe 7-8 years of just selling transceivers, and then they looked at the next logical step was, well, what does that transceiver go into? So they looked at switches. And the first company they got involved with was EdgeCore Networks, and that was about 8 years ago. So EdgeCore, you obviously know EdgeCore quite well. They're a big part of the OCP, a big part of the bare metal hardware anyway. So EPS as a size, we've 28 locations. We have those 3 distribution hubs. We have about 400 staff now and growing very quickly. Everyone has requests in for another member of staff, I think. I know I do anyway. So yeah, solutions and markets that we work in, open networking mainly. We have another side to the business that is programming. We program microcontrollers for the automotive market. So you'll see out of those 28 global locations, some of those are actually programming centers. So we've one in Manaus in Brazil, one in Mexico, one in Romania, and there's a sales function there as well. So we actually still do the open networking part of our business in those locations as well.
Well, that's fantastic. So we started off with golf, Pearl Jam, and now a little bit of open networking. This is a great start to this discussion, Barry. So there's everybody uses the word open a little bit across their infrastructure. What is your definition, or what is EPS's definition of open networking when you speak with customers?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I'm sure you're the same. You've read lots and lots of stuff about open networking, disaggregation, software-defined networking, and it's really hard to pinpoint it down. But for us, I suppose it comes down to choice. So choice for the customer, choice on the hardware side and choice on the software side. So on the hardware side, we have obviously Edge Core Networks, UFI Space, Delta, Celestica, Quanta. But then on the software side, this is where the real choice happens. The boxes are the boxes. They're supposed to be, they use the same Broadcom switching ASICs. They're supposed to be interchangeable, but then this is where the software is where the magic is. So I think it's choice, really. Obviously, there's CapEx savings, but that's not what we like to hear from our customers initially as their reason for moving into open networking. It's not just about CapEx savings, because as well, it depends. There's a CapEx and OpEx scale. So if you want to go down, say Cumulus with an Edge Core 5812 10 gig switch, that's fine, and there will be definitely CapEx savings in that, but you still have to individually manage that box over the CLI. But if you want to go down the operational expenditure savings route, you have things like Netris, Pluribus Networks, Apstra, who were recently acquired, where you have that proper orchestration layer where you can properly automate your network, and now you're getting the operational expenditure savings. So there's a yin and yang to the saving side of things.
And there was a time a couple of years ago when I would sit down with someone about open compute and they would not know what it is, and I would have to spend the majority of my time explaining what is OCP and open networking. In your conversations lately, are you spending more time explaining what open networking is, or are people aware of it and wanting to move this direction? And I'm sure that most people are coming off a traditional legacy OEM type of solution. So how do you educate people the old way versus the new way of doing networking?
Yeah, so I'm saying we're involved in this maybe 8 or 9 years now. At the start, so you guys are a decade old now, so we were in just after. There was a lot of evangelizing and a lot of explaining what bare metal was, what you can do, and a trust issue, I suppose, on the software side, because most of the guys hadn't heard of Cumulus Networks or Pika 8 or IP Infusion. Although IP Infusion would have been well known in the software industry because they're a software OEM themselves, or ODM. Yeah, there's been a big change in the last 2 or 3 years. So when I started, I was going to business meetings with Mark Downey, one of the sales guys, for the sales director for the UK, and we'd be over to the UK, to Amsterdam quite a lot. And more often than not, I was explaining the separation of the control and data plane and different things and where the OCP came from. But now I'm not. Now just about everybody's heard of the OCP. Just about everybody's heard of Cumulus. Edge Core Networks, a lot of people wouldn't have. But then when you tell them it's the same hardware that Dell are using, it's the same hardware that HP are using. It's the same. They're the same bare metal boxes with an operating system sitting on them. So yeah, we're still evangelizing. We're still talking about it. We're still telling people, because there is new, especially on the software side. There's new stuff happening every day. But less and less we're having to explain what bare metal is, what open networking is, what disaggregation is, which is great.
Yeah, no, I was speaking with someone the other day, and they said the reason they moved to open networking is because they said it was an easy transition because their engineers loved Linux. So as you speak with enterprises, are you seeing people that understand Linux get this concept easier, or are you seeing more of the traditional guys wanting to learn Linux and move in this direction? So what's happening at the enterprise level? Not so much the cloud guys, but more at the traditional enterprise level.
Yeah, so you see both. So there's a bit of a drain at the minute, I suppose. So everybody loves public cloud. So public cloud will do everything for you. But obviously there's regulations for certain industries that they have to have their own private cloud. They have to know where those servers are actually sitting and what information is sitting where. And it depends. Do you have those Linux guys in-house? If you do, you should be using them, which is, yeah, we're seeing this an awful lot. So some of the companies we've done some really good work with, they do have that Linux in-house knowledge and they want to work on the CLI. But then there's other businesses, I suppose, when decisions are made from the top down rather than actually letting the network guys tell you what they want. So there's decisions being made on moving to public cloud because maybe they can balance their budgets over 3 years and there isn't the initial capex expenditure of building a network. But what have you got in-house is what you should be looking at. Do I have Linux guys? Do I have network guys? What are they going to be doing if I'm now using AWS or using a multi-cloud strategy and have AWS and Alibaba or Oracle? I need to get experts in for each one of them. So I probably more than likely don't have that in-house. Now I need to, budgeting is probably a full-time job for somebody. It's up to the enterprise, but certainly look and see what you have in-house and use what you have in-house. And we're seeing anybody that does have kind of that Linux capabilities in-house wanting to go down this route.
So then let's take somebody that doesn't have that core skill set. Then how do you at EPS help them? Do you do managed services on the back end? Will you help somebody, or is it more of a vendor-customer relationship?
Yeah, we can do. So what we'll do is we'll start off the conversation with the customer and try and get to where they want to be. So what is your reasoning for moving into open networking? And as I said earlier, what I don't particularly want to hear is that it's just to save on money, because it's not the only reason to be moving into it. So yeah, we'll work on a solution. It depends what they want. Do they still want to individually manage these boxes? Do they want an orchestration level? So we'll work with the customer. We'll take them through proof of concept, and during proof of concept, say we're trying, say it's a data center deployment and it's Cumulus and Oknos from IP Infusion. We will stay with the customer the entire way through and bring in the SEs for certain configuration stuff. We can do that ourselves, but we do like to bring in the software guys because as well the customer gets to see the support level from these software vendors. And the software or the support is second to none on the two I've mentioned. Like Cumulus were well known in the industry for having brilliant support, and that's why they did so well. I've found IP Infusion to be the same, especially on the telecom side. Really, really good support. And so great teams backing up for them.
Yeah, so as you look at these companies, why are enterprises maybe not moving this direction, or what obstacles are people presenting that's keeping them from moving toward open networking?
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, I'd have said the kind of fear of change, fear of the unknown, because there is not, like, open networking is becoming traditional now. Like, there's no two ways about it. As we said, the majority of people have heard of the OCP. They've heard of EdgeCore, Cumulus, Big Switch, IP Infusion. So I really thought last year was going to be the big year for the move in enterprise data center, and as well, I actually thought for enterprise and retail and campus for 1 gig switching would have been a big year last year, because I know Cumulus had a big push. They added in the feature set that they needed, spanning tree and port security and things like that they need for the campus and retail networks. But everything, it's hard to judge where we are because of last year. But basically, most of the gear I was sending out, I was sending to people's houses around EMEA last year. So if they needed an extra switch, it was being sent to someone's house to be installed in the network when they could. If fans were gone or a broken PSU or an MSAT, I was sending it to people's houses. So we had so much in the pipeline for last year, and really looking forward to seeing that move from enterprise. And because of what we were saying, that it is nearly a traditional way of doing networking now, and the spine and leaf is traditional as opposed to the 3-tier hierarchical model. But yeah, it was just really hard to judge because it's same this year. I kept on saying this year is going to be a big year, but nobody's in the places. There's nobody in data centers, so refurbs and things like that have just been put on hold.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably the first person I've spoken to that has used the word traditional and open networking together. So you're seeing that move from something new and different to traditional, in the fact that everybody should know about it or does know about it. That's great. The
Yeah.
so
Well, if
speaking
you're
of the
well,
entire,
if you're a network engineer,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying if you're a network engineer, you should know about it. Do you know if you're a network architect, you should know about the options out there. It's not going back to my college days. Um, I was taught basically there was only Cisco. So an awful lot of colleges, you'll see the boxes are given. The boxes I was working on in college were given in by Cisco. So, and then
Yeah.
you do your CCNA exams in the college. When I was doing the masters, VMware were running it. So you don't even think VMware ran the other part of networking. So it's it's something, and actually it's come around full circle this year. Dundalk IT, which is a college just above Dublin, got in touch, and they're adding an open networking module to the curriculum, and they asked me for a couple of boxes, so I gave them a couple of 1 gig switches with Cumulus, and they've asked me up to speak and things like that. So it shows even that's where you need to get it at college level, that people are seeing what a white box bare metal switch is, what open networking is. The OCP should be mentioned because of the massive changes it's after making in networking. It's yeah, we have to get college students involved here and knowing when they come out of college that the world is not just Cisco and Juniper.
It's very true. In fact, there's a program now in place in Singapore where Facebook is going to help sponsor a curriculum as well around the new way of doing data centers. And I think that what you're doing up there sounds fantastic. And agreed, more academic and research education should be a cornerstone of OCP moving forward. Um, the overall market, since you have a worldwide view, the forecast is 1.3 billion for open networking in the next 2 to 3 years. So you said that this past year was a little bit weaker than what you thought in specific verticals, not overall, but in specific verticals. Do you think that that is a conservative or aggressive forecast by 2023 to hit 1.3 billion?
Yeah, so I think when I was saying some markets were slower, another market, the telecoms market, just exploded though. So, and then as well, we do have other things happening in other areas. So I know Dent, it's the Linux Foundation that run Dent, sitting on edge core switches with a Marvel switching ASIC in it. I think Amazon have just installed them they've gone live with their first network. So there's another section. We obviously, the telecom side is absolutely massive. So just looking at the telecom side and what we're seeing, doing and hearing, I think 1.35 billion is definitely conservative. And as well, I think once we come out of um, this rut that we're in, we'll call it, that the data center side should explode. So we have Sonic, which I'm sure we'll expand on as we talk. We have Sonic now for the data center, which should give us options for just about most deployments as Sonic grows and as the community grows. Yeah, I think very conservative. Just looking at the telecom stuff, and as I said, we're moving into campus with cheaper 1 gig switches and using open source software, because that's what has been it's been the reason why we couldn't get into it, was because we had bare metal hardware, which is great, but then we had the added cost of a NOS on top. And obviously in campus networks, campus and retail, it's primarily 1 gig and it's very competitive there. But I think actually we will have something with Dent and the Edge Core Marvel 1 gig switches now going forward. So if we can get that retail up and going, if the data center side of stuff, if our enterprise data center side of stuff, and obviously the hyperscale side, which we don't see, they obviously work directly with the hardware vendors. Yeah, if all three were to take off, it'd be massively conservative. But just on the telecom side, I think that's conservative.
Yeah, agreed. Telecom has been unbelievable. Target gave a keynote address yesterday at their conference, and they talked about their explosion just on the retail side, but telco as well. We have a new sub project within the networking group around enterprise connectivity, which is around campus as well. So you're spot on with thinking about the growth of campus in the coming year. We've got a lot of different software vendors in the open networking space. And so there's also been a lot of M&A in the last 12 to 18 months. So what is your opinion on why this is happening and how is it affecting your business?
Yeah, so it's a strange one because I'm new enough to being out from behind a computer. So being actually helping the sales guys and being out and being involved with all these different software companies is a relatively new thing, the last 3 or 4 years for me, which I love and it's great. It makes my days completely different. But as well, I suppose I got to saw the cutthroat world of working with these vendors. So yeah, so the first one would have been Big Switch, being acquired by Arista. It was a strange one that like overnight we're doing work with them and overnight they're gone, and overnight a heap of their staff are gone. And you can look at it two ways. It shows open networking and disaggregation. It has caught the eye of the bigger guys. And then as well, you can say on the negative side that it's after leaving a gap, or it weakens open networking a little bit. I don't think it does, because somebody that void or vacuum is filled incredibly quickly. So obviously, Big Switch networks, Pluribus networks would have gone in there with their adaptive cloud fabric, and they have their own monitoring solution as well, which is very similar, done a different way, but very similar to the products that Big Switch were offering. Then after that, we had, I suppose the next one after that was Cumulus being acquired by Mellanox and NVIDIA. And we did a lot with Cumulus. That did hurt us quite a bit. That it didn't happen overnight. It happened over a couple of months. But still, we were a logistics partner for Cumulus. So Cumulus had a CX platform where Cumulus Express, where the Cumulus Linux sits on top of an Edge core box and it's bundled together, taking some of the pain points away for the customers. So we looked after all that for them. So obviously that stopped because they're not going to, if they have Mellanox, they're not going to be putting Cumulus onto an Edge core box. But again, it showed, look, this stuff is working, and you want to see these companies acquired. That's where they started. But then again, it did hurt the reputation maybe of open networking. That, so what happens here if 2 months ago I just bought an Edge core and a Cumulus box and have a support contract for 5 years? Your support contract is still valid, but I get why there was a little bit of worry about it. But as I said, the vacuum doesn't stay unfilled for too long, and we have Sonic now, and I think Sonic is going to be hugely important to us because it takes that risk away that we've seen with Big Switch for a kind of a controller based solution, and then Cumulus for your individually managed devices, but still brilliant support. And if you're into Linux and CLI and playbooks, it's right up your alley. It's brilliant. But Sonic is run by yourselves. It's in Microsoft Azure's data centers. We have Broadcom involved. We have Edge Core Networks, Dell, IP Infusion. We have companies that are going nowhere, and I think that's really, really important for us going forward, that we have an operating system, that there's no danger in buying support contracts, that it's going nowhere. There's roadmaps that are there to be viewed for the next 2 or 3 years, that we know where it's going. So yeah, I think the last one, the last big enough one was Apstra by Juniper, which again shows that this stuff is working, that this stuff is good. Like Apstra is an excellent piece of software. We've done a bit of work with them. We're actually still working with them on a couple of projects because they're still working with third parties. It's really, really powerful software. But again, we have other solutions. So we have Netris. We can do the same, not the exact same, but a similar kind of orchestration with Pluribus networks with their adaptive cloud fabric over multiple fabrics, over multiple data centers. So yeah, as I said, it did a good and a bad thing. So good to show that we're getting places with open networking, and bad in that it left us a little bit of a hole, but not for too long, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits that are going to be coming out of the Sonic framework. And then we have people like Pluribus who are really stepping up as well, their commitment to open compute and putting together their freedom switches. So they've really amplified their commitment toward OCP as well. Speaking of open communities in general, I know that you are across not only OCP, but you keep up to date on what's happening with the Open Networking Foundation, or ONF, LF, of course, and then as well as TIP. So how are you working with those other organizations, and then how is just being involved in an open community impacted your business overall?
Yeah, so yeah, as I said, we're involved. So we've been members with yourselves for the longest. I don't know how long we're with yourselves, 6 or 7 years. And the one thing about you guys was anytime we asked for anything for a speaker, so we started to get more involved. We hired George Say over in America, who was a well-known guy in the industry, worked for EdgeCore. And from then on, we really put a focus on getting out there and evangelizing. And we host our own day sessions and breakfast seminars and all sorts of stuff. We do our own webinars, as you know. You've been a guest on multiple. But you guys, every time we've asked for a speaker at an event, have done it, and that's what you need from these organizations. TIP, we work quite closely with, so we'd be a kind of solutions partner for them as well. So we'd hold a lot of stock for EMEA. So we do it in the States as well. So we'd hold things like Cassini's, cell site gateways, and when their customers are ready to go for a POC, we're ready with the hardware. So we're doing a lot in Africa with TIP. The ONF, we've done bits and pieces with. It's really interesting what they do, but they just do seem to more work with the tier ones. So we're not so involved in their processes, I suppose, not as much as we would be with the OCP and the Telecom Infra project. And again, just what we've got from the OCP over the last 7 or 8 years has been brilliant. And as well, just well-known, having well-run organizations gives a confidence, I suppose. That OCP logo is well-known. The TIP logo is starting to get really well-known. And it does breed a bit of confidence that this is professional. This is a proper community. And you know yourself, with the whole idea of a community is brilliant, that everybody working together for the same goal, things are happening way quicker. Because if everyone branched off on their own and started trying to sell, if EdgeCore branched off on their own and tried to sell bare metal switches, they'd get nowhere. Like, you build the relationships through software vendors, through OCP, through TIP, and you build the relationships with the tier one telcos, say with TIP, through TIP. It all happens through these organizations, and yeah, it's working. It really is working.
Yeah, that is the power of the community. And there is one thing that we can certainly do better on our side, which is explaining to the community, the other communities in the market in general, how are we aligned with TIP and ONF? And that is one thing we are addressing this year. And you'll see more information coming out around how is OCP connected to TIP and ONF, and where do we overlap and where do we collaborate? And then how do organizations work across all three? Because it is very resource intensive to be a part of these communities, both financially as well as headcount and contribution. So we're trying to make that easier on all members. So how would people try?
I've noticed that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I've noticed that over the last while, Steve. I've noticed the ONF and TIP working more closely. Like, what is the point in working on the same projects? Like, they were working on similar projects. So what would be the point in that? And I have seen at ONF things and TIP things and OCP things that more and more you guys are starting to talk about each other, because the funnel is the hardware coming from the OCP into the projects run by the ONF. So there is a relationship and a community there between the three years. But I have noticed much more over the last year and a half, say, that there seems to be a proper thing forming between the three.
Yeah, and expect more of that to come. So let's move on to how would people try open networking easily through EPS? Okay,
so the easiest way is I have a big demo pool of gear there that we use for all our proof of concepts. So either on the telecom side or data center side. So anything from 1 gig switches up to 400 gig switches, all the different cell site gateways from UFI Space and EdgeCore, transponders, aggregation routers. We have some kind of cool stuff happening in routing, actually, with the new Jericho 2 boxes and the Ramon, where we can create basically a spine and leaf, using the Ramon to create the fabric, and then the Jericho 2 as the forwarder. Yeah, so we have all the gear there. We have the relationships with the software vendors, which is most important. So what we will do most of the time will be give you some boxes and let you maybe try out 2 or 3 different softwares that we've recommended that would have good support, that would suit the use case and suit the feature set that you're looking for. Yeah, that's the easiest way. Take a few boxes and start working on them.
That's great. So it's good to know that you have demo gear available, and then also that you have the relationships with the software people, that they don't have to go out and form those initially by themselves, and that you can help on the POC side. Look, Barry, I love chatting with you all the time. You're one of the best experts in EMEA on open networking and with a lot of insight. So I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Absolute pleasure, Steve.
I'll be back with my key takeaways from my conversation with Barry in just a minute. Had such a great time chatting today with Barry from EPS. There were a few things that caught my attention throughout our conversation. The first is he mentioned the increasing trust in the software ecosystem that is coming along now within open networking. In the past, there may have been some hesitancy based on the software options, he said, but that trust is increasing in the overall health of the software ecosystem within open compute. The second is taking a look at what you have internally. He was talking about the different ways that companies or at the enterprise level may be looking at the decision-making process from the top down, or getting a sense of what your current network engineers would like to do and have the skill set to do. So his key takeaway there was to say, hey, take a look at what you have internally to determine your roadmap moving forward. And then if you're a network engineer, that you should be knowing about open compute, and you should know about this disaggregation that's taking place. He was also, as I mentioned during the session, one of the first people I've ever heard use the term near traditional or new traditional way of doing open networking. So it's great to see that combination of now open networking is becoming kind of the de facto way of looking at open architecture. And then the one thing I was really excited about is his efforts to develop open networking curriculum in Ireland through some of his connections at the university level, and how the way that open networking, or the way that any infrastructure has been taught at the universities in the past, has been with traditional hardware players, and being able to teach the next generation the new way of doing architecture is great. And it's fun to see EPS taking a leadership role in that. So thanks again for attending and listening to the SP Spotlight this week. Barry from EPS Global was great. And join us again soon for another SP Spotlight, where I talk with our solution providers about what's going on within the OCP market and the industry in general. Thanks for listening.